Hello, hello, hello. This is Off to the Land of Milk and Honey podcast. My name is Tiambe Lockhart, and this is a podcast that is a thrival guide for Indigenous women. Indigenous women meaning Native American women, Black women that are Indigenous to this whole world, Latina, Asian women that identify with their pre-colonial ancestors and traditions. And this podcast is a thrival guide because it is meant to empower us. It is meant to empower us through doing our shadow work, looking at our own reflections, seeing how we can improve upon ourselves. It's also supportive with spiritual tools that we can implement from day to day. And also, these tools we can use if we ever get in a situation where we are all in survival mode, we can still thrive. Yes, so today we're going to be speaking on the art of cloaking. The art of cloaking. So I'm going to start off with a little story. So I always have animals that come to me, and I know the meanings, and they're always very, very, very significant to me, whether it's a fly, whether it's an eagle, whether it's a raven, whatever it is. I always pay attention, especially if I keep seeing them, because I feel as if the animals are our biggest messengers, and they can tell us what we need to be aware of within ourselves, externally, all of that. And as I'm saying this big bird just like flew up and out of the tree and flew back down. So I was seeing all of these coyotes, right? I mean, like every day, twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. I would hear people talking about them. I would see them. It was kind of crazy. And there was this one day my son and I went for a jog, and then somebody was talking about the coyotes, and we saw a coyote. Then we went on a nature walk later that day. Somebody's talking about the coyotes, totally separate people. And then we saw some coyotes, and it was so crazy that we were on the trail, and then I saw a coyote behind us, and then I saw another coyote, and I'm just like, okay, pick up a stick, you know. And then the coyotes were humping. I was like, what the hell? And so I was like, okay. And coyotes can mean different things in different cultures. To some, they mean folly. I love that word. They mean folly or play. But for me, it always means trickster. It means that somebody's going to come in with some bullshit, acting like they're my friend, and it's some bullshit. Always happens without fail, right? And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I was at the Botanica, and for those who don't know, Botanica is black and brown type of store, spiritual store. And I love Botanicas because I'd prefer to get my spiritual tools from a Botanica rather than like a whitewashed space where it's like $12 for some sage that they got wholesale. We were at this Botanica, and the Botanica is super old school. I love it. It has this 90-year-old grandma there, great grandma, watching telenovas. There's like 50 candles on the floor. Every time I come in, they're like, hi, King, hi, Poppy. It's the king, all this stuff. And so when I was there, I'm getting my regular candles, incense, sage, whatever. And I see a coyote candle, and I'm like, oh, this is what I need. And so I asked the woman, what is this? Like, what is this for? And she's like, protection. Da, da, da. There was a language barrier. So I was just like, okay. So I got it, came home. It's written all in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. So I just did the Google translation. And when I read that candle, it was like, this candle is so that you can be under the radar for anything you want to do. Nobody will see you. And, da, da, da. And I threw that candle out so fast. because there's nothing that we do that is going to be hidden from the all knowing, all seeing. And I want to read really quickly. This is from my Women's Dictionary of Symbols and Sacred Objects. Many figurines of the early Sumerian eye goddess, 3500 to 3000 BC, have been found in Syria and around the Mediterranean. Like Ma'at in Egypt, she represented the spirit of truth and law. Hers were the all-seeing eyes from which no crime could be hidden. She later merged with the goddess Mari, who was also depicted with a huge staring eye, although her form was more human. Eventually, the eye goddess developed into the mysterious wise creatress Mari Ishtar, or Mariana. Once worshipped as the consort of Yahweh in Jerusalem, the goddess's staring eyes aroused uncomfortable feelings in men who came to look upon her spirit as the evil eye. So nothing is ever hidden, right? And Ma'at sees all, the all-knowing sees all, the all-intelligent sees all. But at the same time, sometimes we can use cloaking for protection. Auset used cloaking to hide her son, Horus. And Auset is a goddess that I love to work with. To many, she's the mother, but to Sibyls, she is a sister. And in the Kemetic tree of life, she is 9. Auset is the queen of cloaking. And what is written, to sum it up, on her temple is that you will never know her. You will never unveil her. Even though Helena Blavatsky said unveiling Isis, you will never unveil Auset. Never. She is infinite waters. When you think it's one way, it's another thing, right? So I wanted to speak about cloaking, and I wanted to speak about the negative aspect of cloaking, how people cloak, and then the positive aspect of cloaking and how it can be used for protection. So let's speak of the negative. Negative cloaking is when you hide your true intentions. It's fake friends that smile in your face to get information. People who want what you have, whether that be the actual belongings, objects, or they want your light and will try to steal these things. If they can't steal these things, they want your joy, they want your peace. Also, people that cloak who you really are with rumors and lies so that you won't get opportunities or you won't have community, creating isolation. These are types of ways that people cloak. Creative competition. People want to see what you're working on and steal your ideas. People wanting to steal your essence. All of these, as you can hear, it's about stealing. Now, the positive side of cloaking is when you have a new creation, a project, or a child. You want it to gestate. My grandmother would always say, don't tell everybody your new ideas or their spirits will get in them. So like we've all probably had ideas and then we tell somebody and maybe they're jealous and then they kind of give us a kind of like, it's okay response. Or maybe these poor people take the idea, or maybe just people are really supportive, but they don't give us the enthusiastic response that we want to hear. When we cloak our ideas, we can create things that are more sustainable offerings for our community, for ourselves, for the world. Also, positive ways of cloaking is if you're transitioning, if you're trying to get out the hood, it's important to cloak yourself and not completely hide. That doesn't mean that you have to go completely MIA, but cloak what you're doing, because there are a lot of crabs in a barrel just in general. I think when you're really trying to make these changes in your life, when you're trying to get it out the mud, it's really important to have around you women or community that are getting it out the mud themselves or who are in the driver's seats of their lives. Understand that it's nobody else's fault. Yes, you can experience trauma. Yes, you can experience health issues, mental health, physical health, emotional health issues. All of these things, they're very real. But at the same time, understanding that you have the power to transform that. And so it's important that if you are making these changes too, to have people around you that aren't sitting around and blaming other people for their problems or for where they are. Yeah, people are hooked up. There's some wicked ass people, but I believe you can always get it out the mud. That's why the divine gave us the elementals, gave us the elements, gave us prayer, gave us the word. And I don't mean the word is in the Bible, but I mean word. We can speak Heka when we get to the eighth Sephiroth, Hod and Sebek. We'll talk about this, but we're given words. Also, Harriet Tubman, she cloaked herself and everybody out of there. Harriet Tubman was actually a sage. I didn't even really know this. She was a high priestess. Her dreams would tell her everything that she needed to know, when to move, when not to move, where to go. She was following the star, the North Star, I believe. But that's cloaking as well. Like ways that we can cloak ourselves is cultivating our high priestess or our high priest, right? That's listening to our intuition, not what other people are saying, not being so involved in people pleasing, but listening and honoring our intuition. No one can betray you if you don't betray yourself first. You betray your intuition first. You betray your dreams first. Devotion is so important to the high priestess and the high priest because it is understanding that there is something greater than you that is cloaking you. So when I think of like cloaking in a positive way, I think of kind of like the great mother, big mama, Nut, just dropping down from the sky a cloak and her supporting you. And being in devotion to something higher, being in devotion to the greater good. And I know that there are high priestesses that don't always have the best intentions, but what I'm talking about in this podcast is about us empowering ourselves and loving ourselves and for the good of all. Okay. So being in devotion to something bigger than you and greater than you, disciplining yourself in stillness and in solitude, not needing constant external validations. When you are making these transitions and when you are really cloaking yourself and you're going inward, it's so important to learn. And it might take a minute because there's so much stimulation on our phones, in the palm of our hands, outside, what is going on here, what is going on there. And this might take a minute and you might actually really have like kind of withdrawal symptoms if you're constantly on your phone and you're constantly taking in information and you're constantly getting those little baby dopamine hits. But it's all distractions. Sometimes it makes you feel as if you're doing something when you're not really doing anything. You're busy, but you're not doing anything. You're not productive. And so really being okay with it being quiet, really being okay with that stillness and with that knowing. And that's why I love the high priestess, because it's knowing. So, and we're going to talk about this again with Sebek and Hod, which I'm really excited to talk about because I love that Sephira, but understanding that the logical intelligence is actually the very, 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 probably the lowest form of intelligence. The higher form of intelligence is the way a woman, when she's pregnant, her body begins to produce milk. Our digestive system is higher intelligence. Actually understanding that everything is as it should be in this world, even with the chaos, even with the conflict, and even with things we don't understand, it's actually as it should be. Things are moving. And that goes back to the concept of everything's working out for me. When things feel jacked up and messed up, it's understanding that you're birthing something new, you're expanding, you're contracting and expanding. I'm sure there are women when they give birth, maybe they do have these orgasmic births. I don't know, but I didn't. But understanding that that there is something that is more powerful than us as humans, and understanding, and this kind of like goes back to my first point, was just that we can hide things from man, but the all-knowing, all-seeing, the divine sees everything and knows everything. And knowing that that is the higher power. And there are some people, when they use spirituality, do as that will. They want to do whatever they want to do. They don't really give a fuck. They don't have any morals. They don't have any integrity. They just want to do whatever they want to do, and they want to get what they want. But what if right around the corner there's something even better that's coming for you, and your soul and your will and your animalistic will and your lower three chakra wills, that you can't even, like, you don't even receive this beautiful gift that's coming to you if you just fucking let go of what you're trying to hold on to, you're forcefully trying to hold on to. So understanding, I think, that there is a higher power, understanding that there is something that's more intelligent than what we can see. Yeah, learning to be in that high priestess space of knowing that there's something greater than us, knowing that there's some higher intelligence, not just what's seen. The past 7 years have just been insane. It's like just imbalanced individuals that I've had to deal with that are just all over the place. And I got through that, and I made it to the other side of that because I wasn't just taking in what was being presented to me, what was being said to me. I was meditating, I was praying, I was asking to be in alignment with the divine will, my will in alignment with the divine will. I was listening to my dreams. My ancestors were coming to me in my dreams. I mean, ancient ancestors and even celestial beings were coming. It was so wild, and just telling me what I needed to know. But that came from going within, that came from being still, that came from being quiet, and that came from not needing external validation constantly. Of course, we need confirmation sometimes, you know what I mean? And we need our friends, you know, that we can really trust. We're not supposed to hold it all, but just that comes from quiet. And, you know, I live in LA, and so there's a lot of people that claim to be this and claim to be that, and it's cute to be like spiritual, but not everybody's a high priestess and not everybody's a high priest. And every woman can be a witch, because witch just means wise, which means you're just paying attention as you get older. You understand patterns, you understand the seasons, and that is what wisdom is to me. But a high priestess is somebody who is in devotion and who has discipline for something greater. And, you know, so if you run into anyone who's like, yeah, I'm a high priestess, but if they constantly need validation, or all over the place, and they're being reckless, like, that's not maybe somebody that you really need to accept that they're a high priestess or a high priest. I also have to add to this, and take what applies and let the rest fly. Also, when we're at different stages of awareness and consciousness, especially spiritually, certain teachers will resonate with us and then kind of fall off. And that's not to say that these teachers aren't better or worse or anything like that. But I think that there's a lot of people that put on spiritual costumes and use these spiritual costumes and use this identity as being a healer, when they just want to just take advantage of people, when they're just trying to harvest energy, when they're just in their ego, when they're really just a fucking cult leader. You know what I mean? So just be mindful of that, please. Be careful about that. So prayer, meditation, nature, working in the unseen world, yet understanding that the unseen world is always way more powerful than what you can see. The spiritual world, everything that's happening is way more powerful. Things are always manifested in the spiritual world first, and then it comes down physically. Whether you're talking about disease and illness, you know, that happens emotionally, spiritually first, and then it manifests in the physical world. Whether you're talking about money, whether you're talking about things that you're manifesting that you want to happen, that's why we work with the candles. That's why we do our prayer. That's why we do our meditation. That's why we speak these words, because then that brings it down to the mundane world, to Malkuth. And then the other thing that I would say too that supports us with cloaking is shapeshifting. There's a great book by Ted Andrews called The Art of Shapeshifting, and it really goes into detail about literal shapeshifting. And I do believe that there were people and there are people who can shapeshift into different things, but we're not going to go there right now. But I think when you are moving from one world to another, whether you're moving from poverty to prosperity, whether you're moving from sickness to health, from chaos to peace, I think that it's important. Shapeshifting can really support us with that. So I'm pretty sure that I hear it a lot in like those more whitewashed spiritual new agey kind of books and environments, but it's about like embodying what you already want. You're not well. You begin to meditate on being well. You tell every cell, you meditate on every cell and say you're healthy, you're healthy, you're healthy, you're healthy. Or I think maybe a better example is if, for instance, you want a particular job, you can see, well, what kind of thing would I wear to this job? You know, okay, I'm going to start wearing those type of clothes every day. That's what I would wear to this job. That's embodying, that's shape shifting and embodying your future self. Now, what coffee place would I go get my tea or coffee? Oh, I go to this place. I'm going to start going there. If not every day, I'm gonna start going there twice a week. Okay, I'm gonna start driving there. What's the traffic like? That's embodying, that's shape shifting your environment, shape shifting you. Somebody told me they would work with kids in the hood, and they would take kids. I think they were in San Francisco or something like that, but they would take kids to these big tech companies in the building so the kids could start to see that it was possible for them to work there. If you don't know that it exists, you can't really embody it. So they would take these kids from the hood to Google, to all of these different places, to Amazon, so they could see that it was real. All of these episodes I'm like really excited about. All of the Sephiras I'm really excited about, I really love, but I'm really also excited to do Hetzeru Sephira. Is Hetzeru, her name literally means house of will. So the environment, she's the divine feminine. She's the environment where the will, the divine masculine sits in. And I'm going to do this episode, but I'll give you a little snippet of what's to come. But I did not have a lot of protection while growing up. So as most little girls and most women, when we don't really have that protection from divine masculine when we're growing up, we sometimes we're overly masculine in certain ways, right? And it's kind of like an imbalanced type of masculinity. And I remember, I think it was 2022, Venus was in retrograde in Taurus. And I was like, you know what? I don't really know how to do this whole divine feminine thing. I don't really know that. That's not what I grew up in. But I'm gonna just sit by the river, and every Friday, which is a Venus day, I would go to the river with my son, and I would just hang out by the river, and I would just sit there, and I'd offer like cinnamon and honey to Oshun, and I would just sit there and just meditate. And I remember the first time I did that, it was just very uncomfortable because even though I'd learned to do transcendental meditation a while ago, it just felt very uncomfortable to do that. But I would just keep going and keep going and keep going until I got more comfortable with being still and understood that things were moving as I was still. Things were able to come to me as I being still. And I remember in Jamie Sam's book, I forget which one she was talking about, which animal. She has a great animal oracle deck. But Jamie Sam's, and she was talking about how sometimes we could just keep going here and we could go in here and we're just running around. I think it's the otter upside down, just running around here and running around there, whatever. And our blessings and our gifts and our manifestations are trying to catch up with us, and they can't get to us because we're over here and over here, over here. And so, yeah, just being still is really important, and embodying these things is really important. And then the last thing that I have to say about this is poppy seed. I love poppy seed, to put poppy seed in my candles. When you are cloaking, when you're like, yo, I want to cloak myself, I want to cloak my value, I want to cloak whatever I have going on, whatever I'm making, whatever transition that I'm doing. Use poppy seed, put poppy seed in your candles. I really love that. Also, some of the side effects of cloaking, if you're dealing with people who are energy vampires, people who are used to your energy and draining your energy, it's not a reciprocal type of relationship, friendship, family relationship, whatever it is. When you're dealing with that, they're going to feel some sort of like withdrawal from not having your energy, right? And what I've experienced is people overstep your boundaries, people will bash your name even more. And then sometimes people will even create fake emergencies regarding you. Oh, I'm so concerned. I need to know if they're okay. And I just really, or like even with your kids, like try to create fake emergencies or concern so that they can cloak their obsession with you, their obsession with trying to control you. They can get others, flying monkeys, to come and spy on you, or they it's all just a spy, you know. So expect that as well, that you will have people, especially if you're dealing with people who have heavy narcissistic traits. They will try to overstep boundaries, and they will try to create fake emergencies. Somebody explained this to me this way. It's like, if there's a fire in this house, you're not going to say, hey guys, how's it going? Knock on the door all sweetly. You're going to bang on the door, or you're going to just bust the door open so that you can get the people out. So that's a fake emergency, so that people can completely overstep your boundaries. So just prepare yourself for that. Also, allow people to think that you're dumb. Allow people to think that they won when you first start. If you're quiet and you don't, you're just to yourself. And this is God, I really hope nobody really has to deal with this, but this is just if you're dealing with just mean girls. And mean girls can be men too. Okay, men who are in their feminine energy and their toxic feminine energy and whatnot. But just expect for there to be pushback. So yeah, I think that's all we have for now. And thank you so much for listening. I wish you all well. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.